by the mainstream community. We'll have conversations with maintenance and reliability practitioners just like you.
Everybody, we're at the Mainstream Summit in Perth, and once again, one of the biggest challenges and issues that came out of the research report that we ran, I think there were more than 400 people who were surveyed, is maintenance, workforce health, and well-being strategies. In fact, it was the number one challenge that came out of the report. And we've got Sandra Lamb, who is an organizational psychologist and MD of FIFO Focus with us, and Simon Brown Greaves, who's the Chief Mental Health Officer of Australia Post. They're both going to be on a panel to take on this big topic later on today. Guys, when we did the research, there were a few reasons that our participants, who are all maintenance and reliability leaders, by the way, obviously it's in WA, so mainly mining companies, but there were a few reasons that they felt were responsible for this increase in mental health and well-being issues at work. Job insecurity, high job demand with pressure to perform, relationships with colleagues and managers, lack of empathy from leadership, imbalance between effort and reward, the stigma itself of mental illness, and the ongoing hangover effect that we went through with COVID as well. But by far the biggest, in fact, almost 30% of respondents said that relentless organizational change sat at the heart of a lot of these issues. And in fact, to quote a head of asset management from an oil and gas company, she said, "Change is not communicated properly to frontline teams. Leadership underestimates the impact of change on our trades, apprentices, and operators." Sandra, if I pass that on to you, what do you think of that?
I'm not surprised by those results at all. When we're talking about those types of factors, we're really describing psychosocial risk and psychosocial hazards, which is under the new legislation, the work health and safety legislation, that really PCBUs need to be looking after. So your work demands, your insecure work, your relationships, your inappropriate behaviours are all considered psychosocial hazards. It's not surprising at all, because I feel like we're really delving into the era of burnout at the moment. More people are doing a lot more with less time and less resources. There's less talent available, so the work pressure is really high. And if I look at just the general statistics, workers' compensation statistics in mental health, we know the top 3 reasons why people are mentally stressed is work pressure, workplace violence, and harassment and bullying. And all of those things are really related. So I'm not surprised by those statistics and what you found in the survey at all.
And how seriously is this being taken by? We know who the companies are. We're not going to name who the companies are.
Yeah.
But because it's an issue that's been going, and it comes near the top of the research report every year.
Yes, they have to take it seriously, because this is under the new work health and safety legislation, and there will be prosecutions if PCBUs don't do something in relation to managing the things that cause psychological harm, which are the psychosocial hazards and risk factors. And yeah, definitely, this is not something you say, I don't know about and I can just forget, and you can't be ignorant about it anymore. We see a lot of evidence from even other states where people and companies are being prosecuted if they're not addressing these hazards in the workplace.
It's a legal issue and a compliance issue and a governance issue.
100%. But okay. I know Simon will say the same thing. It's not just about being compliant. If you want an organisation where people want to join, you want to have a very important employee value proposition, you need to have a workplace that's mentally healthy. Simon?
Yeah. You do. I agree. I was just listening to the start of a good conversation. If I can chuck in a couple of other considerations into this, because I'm yet to meet that business owner or senior executive who says to you, "Nah, I don't take it seriously. Yeah, I'm actually not interested in the well-being of my people." And in fact, it's quite the opposite, that the vast majority of senior leaders and business owners that I talk to will say to me, "Of course I take this seriously. I don't want my workers to be hurt." And there are many good reasons for that. So the issue is more subtle than that. The issue is, but I'm not necessarily sure what I need to do or how to go about taking it seriously. And the second point that I've learned over my career is you don't know what you don't know. You have all sorts of good intentions, but unless you actually systematically and deliberately think about these issues, then you're not going to magically create solutions. And I'll give you one example, which I'm sure we're going to chat about later on, which is the very concept of FIFO. FIFO is an accident. FIFO was a circumstantial solution to a labour problem in an emerging environment, and it was driven by, well, we need people, we need them fast, it's a competitive marketplace, we've got remote locations, how are we going to bolt something together? Bang, we do it. And what was missing in that step, which is often the case, was a deliberate and reflective process of let's design this job so that it not only meets the operational requirement of the business, but that it fits in with a humane and psychologically sensible approach. It's only now with the benefit of review and the mirror we're looking at going, oops, could have done that a bit better.
We're trying to redesign stuff on the fly, right?
We are trying to redesign stuff on the fly. I mean, but again, I'm not that critical of it, other than, as you would expect, you need to redesign, right? So let's be clear, you do have to do that work at some point. I suspect what Sandra and I would say is get ahead of the curve, think about that redesign process as early as you can, because otherwise it then just becomes a compliance issue or, oh my God, we're going to be smashed by Comcare or WorkSafe or whatever because we've injured somebody. So if you can get ahead of the curve, that's a good thing. But I think we've got to move away from questioning the intent of leaders and go, we know you want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about how and what do you do first? What's the first step?
Okay. So to put a bit of pressure on you, Simon.
Yep.
You've brought up having to actually explain and do real practical, pragmatic things to address this. You sitting at the top of the tree, you've got a chief in your job title. You're the Chief Mental Health Officer of one of Australia's biggest employees.
Yep.
So tell us about some of the stuff that you are doing and have done.
So we have a mental health strategy that tries to take into account some of the things that we're starting to chat about. It obviously focuses on psychosocial risk. There are two streams in my mind to all good mental health strategies. The first is to deal with what people bring to work, right? We employ humans. They have families and dogs and kids and all that stuff. They bring that to work with them every day. The second stream of things you've got to focus on is what is it that we inflict upon people? What is it that we ask of everybody who comes to work? Now, at a place like Australia Post, where we've got 65,000 people and they all do from frontline to process to parcels and lifting to white-collar knowledge workers, our strategy needs to accommodate that diversity. Now, in practical terms, what does that mean? Understand your risks so you know which particular risks are relevant to each work group and team, then collaborate with the workforce to design a system of work that makes sense in terms of getting the job done, but also protecting people as best you can from risk. In practice, for our strategy, that means we've got equal parts prevention and job design and collaborative, re-engineering of processes. The next bit is to make sure that you have confident and capable supervisors. Now, I'm going to be talking about this later on today, but the short version of that is, because people often ask me this question, do you want managers and supervisors to be competent in mental health? No, I don't. In fact, the irony of what we're going to talk about is that's actually not the most important thing. You know what the best thing a supervisor can be for the mental health of their people? A really good supervisor. So in fact, the skills of supervision, the skills of wellbeing checks, the skills of performance management, feedback, that's where I'd be investing time and effort in building the confidence and capability of our people. Yep. What do you reckon, Sandra?
Completely agree with that. I think it's a big call to expect our leaders to understand mental health to the degree that we would like them to. They have a lot on their plate, and when we do psychosocial risk assessments, it's actually the leaders who are closer to experiencing burnout. So we throw a lot onto our leaders without
we do.
giving them enough time and resources to deal with all the things that is now a requirement for them. And I completely agree with Simon. It's about being a really supportive leader. It's not just understanding mental health. And the other evidence we see is a leader who can provide control to their people also reduces some of those psychosocial risks. So supervisory support and high level of control are what we call protective factors. So if you can't deal with a lot of the other psychosocial hazards, dial those two things up. So I think really all the leadership programs that we run should really increase the level of support that they can provide to their people, and also let go and do less of the micromanaging, because we know those two things hurt.
So if we go back to that original quote by the oil and gas asset manager around not communicating properly to frontline teams, and you're talking about now, Sandra, like real practical examples. Simon's mentioned supervisors. There are thousands of supervisors, not just on mine sites, but big industrial plants all over Australia, who are arriving at plant. They've got their tradies, apprentices, operators. They're under pressure. Production's behind. Maybe something's broken down. Pressure's coming from management. And these supervisors are only in the supervision role because they might have 6 months or years longer tenure than the people that they're talking to. So what are the things or the skills or the capabilities that those supervisors need to be equipped for and trained in? Like, what are they that they then can be able to lead or look after a team of people? And like you said, not fix, but notice when someone turns up and you just say, I know.
We're going to give you an answer.
Okay.
We're going to do this. Okay, Sandra, you're going to start with one, then I'll give you one, then you can get...
Okay.
And we'll tic-tac, because this is a great question.
It is.
And it's a very practical answer, I think. You go first. What's number one?
I say providing clarity and expectations.
Beautiful. Love it. The simple fact of providing clarity and clear expectations makes a difference. I'm going to go even further. Meet with your people and actually have supervision contact. My research and a lot of the stuff I read actually suggests that many supervisors are given a scope and a breadth and too many people to supervise. So in fact, not everyone actually gets supervised. So I'd say my first one is make sure you actually have some supervision scheduled in, because it is the key part of your job.
And I would add to that, if you have good supervision, you realise that their workload may be too little or too much, so you can actually manage the work demands when you do some supervision. In the absence of supervision, a whole bunch of other things can go wrong as well. So you can't monitor there's no workload management if you're not supervising them. You're not realising whether they have the capability to do the job. So sometimes we see organisations say, we'll just give them more people, but if they're the wrong level people with no supervision, they're actually more of a risk than they are something that's beneficial. So I would add that too.
Okay.
Very good. My next one would be really invest in leaders knowing what all of the resources that wrap around them are and how to access them. Because if a supervisor notices that someone's struggling, and let's not even say it's a mental health issue, just that they're doing it hard for whatever reason, every good supervisor needs to know, right, what are the resources at my fingertips that I can connect this person into so that they can do something or get the support and assistance that they need. So information, access to that information, and then if I could add a slight tack onto that is, and know how to have that conversation. Hey, Chris, you seem
it's
like
the
you've
conversation,
been doing hard.
including their psychological safety, that they are not expected to be able to solve the issue. They just need to know what to do with it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which goes back to Sandra's first point, and I think the point you're making, Chris. Let's be clear with our supervisors what their role is. You're not the shrink, and we don't expect you to be that.
Okay. I think the panel is going to be fascinating, but before, I've got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to come back to you, Sandra, because FIFO has been mentioned, and you're squarely in the FIFO space. We know it's an imperfect solution. As Simon said earlier, it was in reaction to something that was happening economically. Do you think it is a better system than it was 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago when it comes to managing people's health and mental well-being?
I really, really do. And I think the big turning point was the parliamentary inquiry into FIFO suicides, which was around 2015, 2016, that's where there was a realization that things like really poor rosters, the 4-1, the 5-1, the 6-1s, are actually detrimental to people's health, and some people are taking their lives as a result of that. So that really, I believe, changed the landscape for mental health in the mining industry, where mental health really became an important part of everyone's business as usual.
Okay. So that was a roster changing.
Roster changing.
That was the tactic.
Yeah,
the
and
strategy.
just a realization that 1 in 3 FIFO workers experience psychological distress, and we need to be dealing with that and now with new legislation to say that physical health is just as important as psychological health, so we need to manage both.
Yeah.
That's really now going to shift it even further.
Yeah.
So it's such a good point. If I'm going to even expand on that, because the impact of poor rostering, in fact, when it comes to the terrible risk of suicide, was disconnection from friends and family, social isolation, being amongst a bunch of peers where the coping strategies were not necessarily optimal, i.e., let's drink a bit, let's get out and muck up a little bit. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. You know, it's really, we created an environment inadvertently where people became disconnected from the other protective factors.
Yeah.
And if I can add in your point too, Chris, about the importance of supervision, if we were not supervising that group, then no one noticed when they were starting to do it hard.
Yeah.
Other than perhaps the peer group, but I'm not sure how well placed they were to say, actually.
Depends on the culture of the company, I suppose.
It totally depends on the culture of the
stigma
company.
part too.
Yep.
Yeah. So
you'll be right, Johnny. Let's go and have a few
come on.
beers tonight, mate. Come
You'll
on.
be fine.
Let's get down and kick the footy. All good.
Wow. All right, guys. Well, we are out of time. Apart from a closing comment by both of you, and feel free to add some more information to it or close on something we've spoken about. Over to you guys.
I think this is a space that's evolving, but I'm really happy with the direction it's heading. I think people realise, or industry realises, that when you bring a person to work, it's the whole person, not just the worker. And I think that's a really good step.
Ask your people. They know.
Great. Simon, Sandra, thanks so much. Look forward to the session this afternoon.
Good on you.